Hey guys, it's Mountain Walk, and today we're going to be taking a look at some pre-modern stuff. Yep, that's right, some more pre-modern decks from the online tournament, so that should be pretty cool. As always, I have some nice beer here. It's dinosaur beer. It's beer from dinosaurs. It's Dino IPA. So let's drink some beer. Mm-hmm. Let's get a looking at this stuff. Okay. So first up, we have the blue-green Enchantress deck. This deck's pretty sweet, although you'll probably notice that there's a little bit of a typo. I'd imagine either they incorrectly submitted the deck or just forgot to put islands in it, because obviously Enchantress is typically a green-white deck, but those plains should probably be islands. There should also probably be some number of Yavimaya coasts in here, although that's a sort of different issue. Um, but yeah, the blue-green Enchantress deck is mostly all about comboing off and then using the Enchantress draw engine as a way to get there. And so instead of like Words of War or something like that, we have Words of Wind where we can keep bouncing our Cloud of Fairies and just draw or generate a bajillion mana with stuff like Serra Sanctum, or I guess you can keep untapping stuff with a bunch of Fertile Grounds and Wild Growths on it. But yeah, Serra Sanctum, or the Living Wish for Serra Sanctum in the sideboard, which is pretty sweet. And the way that you win is you produce a bajillion mana and then you mill them with Ambassador Laguatus. So that's pretty sweet. All sorts of cool stuff you can do. And then we got the recently unbanned Frantic Search in here. Again, pretty sweet. Helps dig for combo stuff. Again, helps generate a bunch of mana too. Um, we got again typical Enchantress stuff. Argothian Enchantress, Enchantress's Presence, some number of exploration, wild growth effects, all that good stuff. I can't remember if trade routes is typically typical, but it's a pretty interesting card for sure. And then also Sealer removal is sort of your main deck removal slash tempo thing slash buy some time or whatever. So it's pretty sweet. And then your sideboard is mostly just like extra copies of things like Cloud of Fairies, Argothian Enchantress, Serra Sanctum. Then you can get all sorts of interesting stuff. Massacre is pretty good, and you have a million mana, so you can wipe their board, which is not too bad. And of course, you draw a bunch of cards, so paying for the upkeep is not a big deal. Um, yeah, and then Tuco Vigilante, again, it's basically your wishable naturalize. Costs 100 trillion mana, but hey, that's okay. So yeah, this deck's pretty good, pretty sweet. Although next time you play, you might want to put some islands in there. But this is pretty cool. This is an interesting deck. This is an interesting take on Enchantress, and so I like that now you can play both different kinds of version. I think this one, or at least the Legacy version, was called like Eternal Wind, something like that. Anyways, this is a pretty old style deck from back in the day, so pretty cool, pretty cool. All right, and here we go. We got freaking Sly, so that's pretty cool. And this is a pretty typical main deck sideboard, so 75 is pretty normal, with the exception of a couple things. Obviously, you should be playing forward Curse Scroll. There's no real reason to play less. Should probably be only playing like one Sulfuric Vortex main deck, and for the love of God, please don't play Shock ever. Just there's no reason to play Shock, especially when you're like cutting down on Curse Scrolls. I imagine this person just couldn't find the Curse Scrolls. Um, I've never seen a Sly list without them. I couldn't imagine playing without Curse Scroll. That's pretty important. But you do see some pretty interesting deck building choices because of Flame Rift. So with Flame Rift, you really don't want to fall behind, obviously, on life total. So there's only a couple fetch lands, and then 2 Barbarian Rings, and so that makes sense. And if you have less fetch lands, obviously Grim Lavamancer is a little worse. I'm not 100% sure if I've actually want to cut down to 3, but I can understand the logic behind it. Although you should pretty much always play 4 Jackal Pup, so I'm not really sure about that. It's pretty wonky. But yeah, I'm definitely playing 4 Jackal Pup before I'm playing even 1 Goblin Patrol. But yeah. Also, Price of Progress, pretty sweet, pretty sweet. I'm not sure if I want to play like 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4 main deck. Just depends on your metagame, but that's obviously fine too. But overall, yeah, just a fairly typical list with a couple niggling things I would change. But yeah, this is basically Sly. So there you go. Okay, and this one's pretty spicy. This is a pretty spicy list. So this is like a mid-range Psychotog style deck. So instead of being like a super hard control deck, it plays more creatures and stuff and kind of like almost kind of like a tempo-y sort of game plan. Um, but yeah, I mean, look, I just kept looking at this list and so just keep seeing weird shit. I was like, wait, this deck plays Dark Ritual and Rishadan Port? That's amazing. So that's totally strange. It plays AK but no intuition to get it. I think that's probably like the one thing I would change is at least like getting one or two intuition because obviously intuition AK is just so strong, and then you could tutor for like I don't know Plague Spitter or whatever. Um, so yeah, that's always pretty sweet. So yeah, I'd probably cut something, maybe Plague Spitter or whatever for an intuition. But yeah, this is pretty sweet. You can ritual out your turn one Hypnotic Specters or Plague Spitters. Um, you can draw a bunch of cards with Shadow Mage Infiltrator. You have some removal and Edict and Smother. Off for card draw, a little bit of counter magic with Mana Leak, then Cabal Therapy, obviously even more, and works really well with Plague Spitter to sort of wrath the board of 2 toughness stuff. Pretty cool. And then yeah, for your mana base, I mean, you're obviously playing Port, which is, I mean, that's cool. Then we have stuff like Cephala Coliseum, things like that, which are a little more common in Psychotog decks. But this is pretty interesting. I'd be interested to see how well this deck did. And then the sideboard, I guess, I mean, really leaning heavy into the mid-range stuff. So you have Braids. So definitely just want to keep playing lands, drawing cards, um, like with Shadow Mage, and then just abyssing them every turn, or Smokestack, really. So yeah, Braids is pretty interesting. I've always been trying to find a way, somewhere to put the card. It's pretty sweet. Um, okay. Duress, of course. Duress works really well with Therapy and is awesome combo hate. Engineer play against obviously all the tribal decks. Funeral Charm is pretty good. I guess if you're just like looking for a card like I want more creature removal and I also want discard and I also want a way to give my Psychotog Swamp Walk. I think that's the third one is Swamp Walk. So it's pretty good role filler. Does a lot of things that other cards cannot do. And then we have singletons of Haunting Echoes, Morphling, Terror, and Upheaval. Upheaval is pretty sweet against a lot of board control decks, which can plays as much removal as you do, so you can just combo them with Tog, which is pretty sweet. Terror is just more removal, pretty good. Morphling, I'm not a fan of. I don't really like Morphling in any deck except like maybe Oath, but even then, it's not like particularly like doesn't feel that good sometimes. So not a fan. I pretty much wouldn't play Morphling anywhere. It feels pretty bad, but this list is really interesting. So I like it. Pretty cool, pretty cool. That's why I like to do these ones because these guys just always come up with interesting stuff, new takes, always something to talk about. Even if I'm criticizing the deck, it's always good to talk about these things. So the more you know, the more we can talk about it and figure things out, the better everyone gets, which is great. Which is great. All right, so let's go on to number 5. All right, this is a blue white blue white Dreadstill. Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool. I like it. Got Mother of Runes, Melee Mage Dreadnought. I mean, Mom on Dreadnought's pretty sweet. I think 2 Mother of Runes is actually correct because it's kind of do nothing, obviously, without Milling Mage or Dreadnought. You don't play a ton of creatures, so I think that actually seems pretty good. Um, and then of course we have all sorts of interaction and stuff, piles of it. Mana Leak, Counterspell, Stifle, Vision Charm, etc., etc. Seal of Cleansing to tutor for. I mean, we're really leaning hard into the Dreadnought thing. We got 4 Enlightened Tutor to fetch it up, so that's pretty sweet. And then your lands, just islands, plains, wastelands, Flooded Strand, and Attica Wastes. And then, of course, sideboard, we've got all sorts of wonderful cards, anti-combo, anti-other stuff. We got a null for, well, any deck that relies on artifacts and enchantments, which is a lot of times combo decks. So, like, having that super cheap interaction is super sweet. Then we got Chill against red decks, Mom against more super heavy removal decks, Null Rod against artifacts, Seal of Cleansing again, really hateful against artifacts and enchantments, Swords against aggro decks, Crypts of course against those nasty combo decks or Reanimator or whatever, and then Winter Orb because it is super sweet against any deck that just wants to play a bunch of lands with a bunch of mana. So yeah, that's pretty cool. I kind of want to play another Winter Orb, even though this deck has 4 Enlightened Tutor. I don't really like to stress my Enlightened Tutors too much and be like, oh, I'll just tutor for it. Sometimes you can't always do that, so it's always nice to have extra copies of cards you really want or super backbreaking. So I could use another Winter Orb. I think that'd be sweet. But deck looks pretty good. Also, I always was a big fan of the Peak Meddling Mage thing. That's cool. Sort of like a Gitaxian Probe, except it has sweeter art. We got that person like looking in the crystal ball, and they're like, "Oh man, what's going on here? Freaking peeking." Anyways, this deck is pretty cool. I like it. Just another interesting take on the Dreadnought stuff. Well, although this one doesn't have any standstill, of course. But anyway, let's move on. Here we have a Doomsday list, and this one seems to be the typical sort of Ebony Charm Doomsday list, which just is blue-black and just loops Doomsday, and you kill him with Ebony Charm, which you just loop over and over again. Yeah, pretty cool. I mean, it's a pretty sweet deck. It does seem to have like a lot of spots where it's vulnerable. Obviously, Graveyard Hate, Null Rod, a burn spell in response to like when you're low at life and they burn you with Ebony Charm, or they try to burn you with Ebony Charm and you burn them in response. Obviously, that would be a problem. There's all sorts of issues, but I like the deck. I think it's pretty cool. It's one of the combo decks that just looks the best. Because look at those lotus petals and LEDs and chrome spheres. Yeah, that's pretty sweet. Then we have, again, your sideboard, just anti-hate stuff. Rushing River, Infest against super aggressive aggro decks. Hurkyl's Recall against, obviously, the aforementioned Null Rod. Defense Grid against control decks. Coffin Purge, again, more just disruption against nasty graveyard decks. And then, of course, Therapy is just more disruption. So, yeah. Nothing too wonky here. Pretty cool, though. Pretty cool. I mean, any deck where you can play Future Sight, that's got to be good, right? I'm pretty sure that's pretty good. Alright, and so here we go. We have another Pox deck. Another Pox deck. A Pox deck. Of course, I love Pox. This deck is sweet. I love being able to play the rack, although this one doesn't play it, but I love the rack anyways. So yeah, again, this is pretty typical for a Pox style deck. The only thing that stands out to me is a little wonky is all the powder kegs, because it's little. It's obviously really bad with Curse Scroll, and a lot of times you will be kegging at 1 because that's the most like the lowest number, like that's what most aggro decks have, like a curve around 1, so you're kegging at 1, but if you have Curse Scrolls in play, then that's obviously pretty awkward. And And then also with the sideboard null rods with all the artifacts with activated abilities seems a little ambitious. It's not like you can just sideboard all of them out. You have 15 of them, so that seems tough. But overall, though, it's got good stuff. Got your swamps, wastelands, factories, your one of Nether Spirit, Therapies, Duress, Innocent Blood, Pox, Ritual, Chimeric Idols, all sorts of good stuff. Yep. And then sideboard, you got Plague against the go wide decks like Elves or Goblins, which can certainly be a problem. Bridge, again, another really good card against those low to the ground aggressive decks. Jester's Cap and Null Rod, pretty sweet against combo decks, and Negator against control or combo decks, either or. It's pretty sweet. Boarding in Negator, pretty awesome. Everyone likes it. But yeah, this is pretty good. Although I almost feel like I'd rather play like instead of 4 Mox Diamond, like 3 Mox Diamond and a Lotus Petal, but not sure. Anyways, let's go on to number 2. Okay, so this is Reanimator, and this is a pretty typical stock Reanimator list. Everything's good. Only thing I don't really like is the Spirit of the Night. I'd rather just play another Symbiotic Worm or Verdant Force or something. But other than that, pretty stock, pretty good. Yeah, not much to say here. Although I feel like I still just want to play. I mean, playing Keg is good, because obviously it can kill Null Rods, or well, okay, Keg can't kill Null Rods, but it can kill Crypts, and then also like deal with Jackal Pups and 1-drop elves and white weenie stuff and crap like that too. So that's pretty interesting, pretty good. I feel like I still want some number of null rods, but other than that, looks good. It's just a Reanimator deck, so not much more to say here. Yeah. All right, and of course we got this thing, which is this is a pretty spicy list. I mean, it's red black, so it's obviously going to be hot. Get it? Because it's hot and stuff. Anyways, yeah, look at this thing. I think the only thing that stands out to me that I don't like is like the rack. You want to play 4, all right? I got sweet black bordered versions of like Antiquities, the rack. I mean, you gotta play 4, right? That's the only thing I gotta really criticize them on. That's sweet. But yeah, mana base looks good. I mean, basically this is like a red black sort of. It's kind of like Machine Head esque. Your terminates and your voids and stuff and duress and all that good stuff. It feels like it maybe is going a little bit too hard on the discard because you have 4 duress, 3 therapy, 2 stupor, 4 mesmeric fiends, 3 ravenous rats, and 2 cabal interrogator, and then a headhunter too. To me, that seems a bit excessive. I feel like I'd want to play like more maybe cards that are just better at beating down or something. But obviously, therapy is pretty sweet with stuff like Ravenous Rats, which I like a lot. It kind of makes me want to run, oh shoot, what's the card? The Volrath Stronghold to like recur your Ravenous Rats over and over again. Lavaborn Muse is a pretty spicy one. That's kind of interesting. I don't know how good that is or was, but that's pretty cool. So yeah, this deck is interesting. I'm pretty sure he got a lot of head scratching from his opponents, just like what the hell. Yeah, and then in the sideboard, all sorts of good stuff. The only thing that's a little wonky is like the random festering goblin that just seems a little weak. Everything else is pretty good, and yeah, you can easily make a case for it. But yeah, maybe not the festering goblin, not so much. Yeah, look, you got splits on Graveyard Hate with Withered Wretch, Tormod's Crit, Planar Void, Null Rod, and Meltdown, and for the artifact decks, Blood Moon against multicolor decks, Boil against blue decks, more therapies, Copper Purge Cremate against Graveyard, uh, Dread of Night E-Plague against a lot of the creature decks. Obviously, Dread of Night only good against white decks. Festering Goblin against decks that play creatures. Seems a little loose, but other than that, it's pretty good. I mean, it plays Void. Who doesn't want to play Void? That is so sweet. Um, yeah, I'm not sure like what I would do to change this. I've tried to like play like Ravenous Rats dot deck before, but it feels like I couldn't make it um, come together. So this is pretty cool. Like I said, I'd like for the rack because the rack is sweet. But everything else looks pretty interesting. I'd be curious to see how well it went. I mean, that's a lot of discard. Discard loses a ton of its value once you know you're both hellbent or heckbent or whatever. So, not sure how good that is, but pretty cool. Pretty cool deck. Pretty cool deck. Although I don't understand what Slack Rack is. Uh, I'm trying to think if that's a reference to something. I don't know. Anyways, this deck was cool. Another interesting tournament. All sorts of interesting decks. Pretty cool. Pretty sweet. Pretty based. So that's it for today, guys. So thanks for stopping by. Hope you enjoyed this. Looking at all these interesting decks, and I know I did. So thanks for stopping by, and have a great day.